I had always believed loyalty would protect me. 10 years of overtime, missed birthdays, silence in meetings when others took credit, because I thought one day someone would notice. That day came. They noticed and gave my promotion to a 20-something kid who shares my boss's last name, his cousin. That night, I opened a file I wasn't supposed to keep. I shouldn't have copied it. I shouldn't have opened it. But I did. And once I saw what was inside, I knew I had two choices: bury it and survive, or burn it all and finally breathe. I chose fire. The email subject line read, "Internal audit finalized. Promotion review tomorrow." My stomach twisted with something between pride and nausea. I had survived the quarter from hell. 12 weeks of deep dives, duplicate receipts, whispered threats, and quiet nights spent rewriting compliance reports. But I made it. I closed my laptop at 1:48 a.m. and walked through the dark office, the only sound my footsteps echoing against cubicle walls. For 10 years, this place had been my second home. I thought it would finally reward me. At home, the hallway was silent. I passed my daughter's room. Light from the cracked door painted a thin line across the carpet. I peeked in. Her arm was dangling off the bed, still clutching the crayon she'd been using to draw me. Again, a superhero dad in a suit, surrounded by flames. My wife's voice echoed from memory. "She keeps drawing fire, Ethan." "What do you think that means?" I stepped into the kitchen. There, above the sink, was our wedding photo. I stared at it. My wife looked so young in that picture. And hopeful. She hadn't looked at me that way in years. Not since the missed anniversaries. Not since, "Just one more quarter, babe, I promise." I opened my work inbox again. Couldn't help it. Just one last scan. I found the email trail from 6 weeks ago, where my boss, Jason, had responded to HR. Assuming Ethan remains consistent through the quarter, I see no reason not to proceed with the promotion. That was the last thread. Strangely, the chain was gone. The entire email history disappeared. No trash record. No archive. I searched every keyword I could think of. Nothing. It was as if the conversation never happened. I didn't sleep that night. I drifted off just before sunrise and dreamed my daughter was standing at my desk, tearing up Post-it notes. "Don't let them string you along, Daddy," she said, eyes wide. "You're not their puppet." I woke up to her alarm buzzing in the next room. The company-wide meeting began at 10 a.m. sharp. Jason stood in front of the screen like a preacher in a custom-tailored sermon, throwing words like innovation, merit, and vision around like confetti. Then he smiled and gestured to the young man sitting beside him. "This quarter, we're proud to announce that our new Director of Internal Risk Compliance will be Grant Walker, Jr., Jason said, clapping first. My heart stopped. Grant Jr. stood up, smug as hell in a Navy suit. Early 20s, baby-faced. I'd seen him twice in the break room, once bragging about NFTs, once asking how to print duplex. No audit experience, none. But he had Jason's last name. People clapped. Not for long, but enough. I didn't move. I stared at Jason, who avoided my eyes. Afterward, I waited at my desk, stunned. 5 minutes later, Jason's assistant tapped my shoulder. "He wants to see you in his office." Inside, Jason sat behind his desk, all professional warmth. "Ethan, first off, thank you. Your contributions were beyond valuable this quarter." "Then why am I training your nephew?" He smiled like I'd asked what 2 plus 2 was. "You know how this works. Optics, youth, forward-facing leadership. We need to appear agile, digital first. Grant brings a new voice." I swallowed rage. He doctored investment returns at his last job. I saw the report. Jason leaned forward. That was never confirmed. It was buried. He sighed. Look, this isn't personal, but I need you to onboard him. Give him your systems. Help him learn the ropes. In 6 months, we reevaluate. You want me to train the guy who stole my job? I want you to show us you're still a team player. I didn't answer, just stood up and left. As I passed the hallway window, I saw my reflection in the glass. Tie crooked, eyes hollow. For a decade, I had climbed this company's ladder. Only now did I realize the ladder wasn't leaning against a wall. It was dangling over a trapdoor. I tried to pretend things were normal. I showed up early, stayed late, responded to every email with a chipper tone and an extra, per my last note. But something was off. More than just the taste of betrayal. Something beneath the surface. A smell of rot under new carpet. It started when I reviewed a vendor approval form that had my signature on it. Only, I never signed it. Not just a gut feeling. The pen pressure was too even. The D in read was looped instead of slashed. I always slash. I opened the file metadata, signed digitally at 2:13 p.m. On a Tuesday, I was in a client meeting across town. Someone forged it. Not once, but likely many times. And no one noticed. Or maybe everyone noticed and chose to ignore. I brought the form to HR. Casually, cautiously. Oh, that? Looks fine to me, the manager said without blinking. But this signature's not mine. She smiled. Memory's a tricky thing, Ethan. You've been under a lot of stress. Her tone was syrupy sweet, and for a moment, I felt dizzy. Was I going crazy? Had I signed it? That night, I called my mom. I hadn't spoken to her in weeks. How's work, sweetie? She asked. I hesitated. Strange. You get that promotion yet? I stared at the wall. 10 years, Ethan. You're too smart to be stuck in one place. You bought a house yet? I lied. Soon, she sighed. Your father would have said the same thing. Just don't wait until it's too late. I hung up and stared at the blank ceiling for hours. What if I was losing it? What if I'd buried myself in this job so long I didn't know what was real anymore? The next morning, I found a calendar invite labeled Performance Realignment Coaching, Mandatory Attendance. No sender listed. The room was windowless. A consultant in a pastel blouse greeted me with a rehearsed smile. She called it soft skills reinforcement. I called it gaslighting. Let's discuss perception versus reality, she said. Sometimes our minds tell stories that aren't objective truth. They were trying to unwrite me. I walked out after 10 minutes. Back at my desk, I opened a private sandbox server I'd built during the last audit. It had logs, raw, unfiltered, not sanitized reports, not pre-approved visualizations, just cold, hard system activity. I ran a search on altered approval forms, 17 matched entries, all signed by me. None originated from my device. I dug deeper, cross-referenced internal employee IDs. The same 2 credentials appeared in each metadata stream. Mine, and an internal IT user labeled ARXDev. That ID wasn't on any org chart. I pulled up access logs. ARXDev had root permissions. Whoever it was could overwrite, delete, scrub, without trace. I needed more. I waited until after hours, then went down to the archives floor, where we stored obsolete tech, old hard drives, junk terminals. I had a hunch. Behind an unplugged fax machine was a dust-covered HP printer. Its Ethernet light still blinked faintly. I jacked in my tablet. The printer had been receiving silent packets every night at 3:33 a.m., Each file had a label, Watchdog. I opened one. A spreadsheet, hundreds of rows, employee names, flagged behaviors, sentiment scores from emails, even badge swipe anomalies. We were being watched, categorized, profiled. A corporate surveillance algorithm. They hadn't just forged my signature. They'd been building behavioral risk profiles on all of us. The printer chirped. A fresh file had come in. I opened it. It was short. Just 3 lines. Name: Ethan Reed. Risk level: escalating next action. Observation shift. External contingency prepared. My chest tightened. External contingency? That sounded permanent. Taped inside the printer's tray was a sticky note. Handwritten in all caps. Check tray 2. I did. Another USB stick. Older model. 4 GB. Plugged it in. A single file. You're not alone PDF. I clicked. Inside, encrypted messages, names, IPs, a map of whistleblowers across departments, a network. They called themselves Grid 48. At the bottom, a final message. If you found this, you're already in danger, but also, you're ready. Let's begin. Then a new file appeared, without prompt. Title: You're next? My screen went black. It started as a whisper, then a shared link. Then a full-blown Teams thread exploding with notifications I couldn't mute fast enough. A video clip had leaked across the company's internal comms network. Security flagged it as unauthorized content, but it was too late. Everyone had already seen it. The video showed me sitting at my desk, envelope in hand, looking around before slipping it into a drawer. The timestamp was from last Friday. The narration was robotic but familiar. Ethan Reed, head of internal audit, accepts bribe for tampering with vendor report 0473. I hadn't been at my desk that day. I was in a finance meeting. But the figure in the video looked like me. Mannerisms, suit, even the tired eyes. The voice, synthesized from old recordings, matched mine down to the breath. It was a deepfake. A good one. I rushed to IT. Who uploaded this? The guy behind the desk shrugged. Video came through a spoofed internal address. It's bouncing through too many internal proxies. No way to trace. I left before he could finish. An hour later, Jason called me into his office. He looked solemn, eyes full of calculated concern. "This is serious," he said, gesturing to the paused frame on his screen. "But I believe in your integrity, Ethan. That's why I've halted the internal investigation for now." My mouth went dry. "You believe me?" He smiled. "Of course. But there's heat from the board. External contractors are asking questions. I need you to take a leave of absence. Just 2 weeks. Let things cool down." Beneath his fake empathy, I could feel the knife. He wasn't protecting me. He was isolating me, discrediting me before I had a chance to fight back. I went home early. My daughter met me at the door, school bag slung over one shoulder. "Are you okay, Daddy?" I knelt to hug her. She held me tightly, then whispered, "Are you going to get arrested?" I didn't answer. I just kept holding her. That night, I sat in my garage with the door closed and lights off. The smell of old motor oil and cardboard filled the air. I held the USB from the printer's tray, the one marked, "You're not alone." Grid 48 was real. I could see their traces, their encrypted messages, their digital fingerprints hidden beneath years of system code. I knew they were watching me now, just as I was watching the company. So I made my choice. I copied everything I had: logs, forged approvals, sentiment score archives, access metadata, the deepfake analysis. Then I encrypted it, masked the upload through 6 bounce points, and submitted it anonymously to Glass Mirror. the whistleblower publication known for outing 3 multinationals last year. Then I waited. The next morning, the glass mirror site was down. Not just lagging. Gone. Error 500, server unavailable. I checked backups. My files? Gone from the vault. I checked my private sandbox. Wiped. Email history? Blank. My personal cloud? Access revoked. Everything erased. I stared at the screen as my hands began to shake. They hadn't just stopped the leak. They'd scrubbed my fingerprints from the truth. That night, I unplugged every smart device in the house. I turned off Bluetooth, packed up my personal drive, and went outside. The sky was so clear it hurt. Somewhere nearby, someone was watching me, maybe more than one. As I re-entered the house, I saw it. On my desk. A black USB stick. No label, no note, no explanation. I hadn't left it there. My first instinct was to toss it, but curiosity twisted inside me like a key. I plugged it into my offline laptop, heart pounding. Inside, every file I had sent to Glass Mirror, plus hundreds more. Files I'd never seen. Employee blacklists, full surveillance reports, private transcripts of Jason's closed-door meetings, a timeline of deepfake development going back over a year. Then a folder titled Fireproof. In it, one file, a text document, just 3 words. Keep going, Ethan. I looked around my empty room. Somewhere, someone still believed in me, and they had better access than I ever did. I always thought Grant Jr. was the architect. The smug smile, the nepotism, the trail of polished shoes trampling over protocol. But as I dissected the new files, memos, voice notes, strategy briefs, it became clear. Grant Jr. wasn't the hand moving the pieces. He was a piece, a decoy, disposable. The real puppeteers were nestled in quarterly shareholder calls, masked behind shell firms and overseas accounts. The company's largest voting bloc was controlled by an investment syndicate, Artemis Capital. Quiet, global, ruthless. They had full veto rights, silent board privileges, and deep pockets that swallowed dissent. Jason wasn't their ally. He was their product. Buried in a personnel chart, I found a name I hadn't seen in over a decade. Harrison Lorne, once my ethics professor in grad school. Preached transparency like gospel. Told us to lose sleep if we ever compromise principle. Now, he was a board advisor at Artemis. I stared at his headshot. Older, colder, but unmistakable. Had I become what he warned us about? Or had he? I needed air. I drove to the cemetery just before dusk. No traffic, no questions. Just me, my breath, and the gravestone that read, Thomas Reed, 1959-2008. A man who refused to stay silent. My father had been blacklisted for leaking embezzlement in a county development board, died jobless, broke, but never wrong. I crouched beside the stone and whispered, "It's happening again, Dad. But this time, I'm not walking away." The next morning, the message came. A plain text, no contact name, just a single line, "We know where you sleep." My blood froze. I double-checked the locks, reset every password, but fear only lasts so long before it calcifies into resolve. That night, I went live. Not just on one platform. 3. I linked my backup laptop through a battery of proxies, fed the full package, documents, audio, deepfake analysis, surveillance logs, into simultaneous live streams on underground news channels, whistleblower boards, and a public link on the Glass Mirror backup archive. No filters, no explanations, just truth. People flooded the streams. 10 minutes in, comments were pouring in faster than I could read. The deepfake side-by-side alone made people erupt. I watched in silence, chest tight, hands steady. Then came the knock. Not on the door, on the chat. "Remember me?" the message read. I hesitated. Another ping. "Let me in. We need to talk. I have something you'll want." It was Jenna, a former colleague, brilliant, sharp-tongued, and the last person I expected to see again. She'd once reported me for non-collaborative behavior when I refused to approve a shady contract. I'd assumed she'd sold me out. Now she was in my driveway. I opened the door. She stepped in, eyes shadowed by stress, but clear. "I wasn't trying to burn you back then," she said before I could speak. "They made me sign the complaint. Said if I didn't, they'd make me disappear. Quietly, like they did to Miller. Miller transferred." She shook her head. "No, Ethan. Miller never made it home." She placed a flash drive on the table. "Everything you've posted? They have a contingency plan. Kill switch codes, media takedown requests pre-drafted. This," she pointed to the drive, "is the only copy of the original asset logs, unaltered, verifiable." I stared at her. She could be lying. She could be sent to bait me. But her eyes, they held the same fear mine had held 2 weeks ago. "What do you want from me?" I asked. "To help finish what you started." I plugged in the drive. She was telling the truth. The raw files showed intentional tampering, timestamps layered, emails pre-scripted. It wasn't just manipulation. It was orchestration. I uploaded the new files live. Comments exploded again. Viewership doubled. Just then, an alert popped on my personal screen. "Official summons, U.S. Congressional Inquiry. Subject, Ethan Reed. Attendance, mandatory note attached. No one is untouchable, not even you." I sat back, chest hollow. I had pushed the game into the light. Now it wanted to swallow me whole. The hearing chamber was colder than I imagined. Not physically, but in tone, in energy. Red carpets and mahogany desks gave it an air of gravitas. But behind every podium sat judgment, wrapped in suits and smiles. I was ushered in through a side door, past murmuring aides and rows of press. I took my seat at the center table. Microphones angled toward me like scalpel blades. A nameplate read, "Mr. Ethan Reed, Witness." The camera light blinked red. A senator cleared her throat. "Mr. Reed, you're under oath. Do you understand the weight of your testimony today?" "I do." The first questions were procedural. How long had I worked for the company? Did I have authorization to access the materials I shared? Were the files altered? Could I confirm their authenticity? I answered each with the calm I no longer felt. As I explained the surveillance system, the deepfake video, and the behavioral profiling logs, I saw eyes widen. Whispers. Pens froze mid-stroke. I referenced timestamps, showed raw code, traced manipulation back to names I'd once typed into emails without suspicion. Viewership online surged. Over 2 million were watching the stream, according to the ticker in front of me. Every sentence was echoing into homes, classrooms, office cubicles across the country. Then came the twist I hadn't braced for. A gray-haired man on the committee adjusted his glasses and leaned in. "Mr. Reed, would you kindly clarify why a particular folder from your document archive was also found on an encrypted drive in the possession of Artemis Capital?" I froze. "Excuse me?" He tapped his pen. "You worked under Jason Cross. You uploaded your findings to whistleblower portals. But did you know that prior to that, your initial sandbox, where you stored classified metadata, was also mirrored onto a private cloud funded by one of Artemis's subsidiaries?" The air thickened. The monitor zoomed in on the senator's nameplate. Harrison Lorne, the same professor, my mentor, My inspiration, my betrayer. He looked at me with blank eyes. I could have denied it, claimed ignorance, but something shifted in me. I leaned into the mic. Then you already know the truth, sir, which makes your question meaningless. He didn't blink. Recess was called shortly after. Outside, the sun pierced through capital clouds. I stepped into the courtyard, breath catching. Reporters shouted questions. I ignored them. Then I saw him. A boy, no older than 10, holding a handmade sign. Thank you for telling the truth. He met my eyes, didn't smile, just nodded. Like he knew the weight I carried. I crouched down. You made that? I asked. He nodded. My dad worked there. They made him quit when he said something was wrong. Was he right? The boy looked me straight in the face. He always was. Back inside, a federal agent approached me quietly. Mr. Reed, the Department of Justice wants you as lead witness in the financial crimes case. It'll require full cooperation. 5-year minimum involvement. I blinked. 5 years? You'll be relocated, protected, new identity if needed. But your family can't stay with you. That night, I didn't sleep. Instead, I stood in the living room, watching my daughter sleep on the couch, arms wrapped around a stuffed fox. I watched my wife flip through a photo album, pretending not to cry. The weight of the offer pressed down on me. In the morning, I called the DOJ. I'm not disappearing, I said. I'll testify, but I stay. I rebuild from here, with my name intact. There was a pause. Then the agent replied, That's brave and dangerous. I know. Weeks passed. The board collapsed. Several executives turned themselves in. Jason fled the country. Artemis claimed ignorance, but regulators weren't buying it. Harrison Lorne resigned for health reasons. But from the ashes came whispers. A sister firm, Lyra Holdings, shared too many structures, too many directors. The beast hadn't died. It had shed its skin. The price of truth wasn't peace. It was persistence. One evening, I received a letter in a sleek envelope with a blue and white seal. International Council for Financial Integrity. Board nomination packet. Inside, an official offer. They wanted me on the global task force. At the bottom, a list of current board members. One name stood out. L. Bennett, former Artemis legal counsel. I closed the folder. Sometimes, the fire doesn't end. It just moves. The coffee shop across from the university still served watery cappuccinos and over-toasted bagels, but that morning, it felt like the center of a quiet revolution. Ethan sat by the window, sipping slowly, watching students cross the campus lawn with notebooks, headphones, and the kind of confidence that hadn't yet been burned out of them. He adjusted the collar of his tweed jacket, not the corporate type, but something lighter, more human. His phone buzzed, and he glanced down. 9:15 a.m. Room B204. Resilience and Ethical Intelligence Workshop. Instructor, Ethan Reed. The title still felt foreign, like borrowing someone else's name. Yet here he was, no longer dissecting fraud or dodging shadow boards, but teaching 20-year-olds how to recognize manipulation before it buried their lives. Inside room B204, 27 students filled the chairs. Their faces were a mix of curiosity and quiet skepticism. Ethan connected his laptop, dimmed the lights, and opened the first slide. Welcome, he said. This isn't a course about whistleblowing. It's about seeing the trap before you step in. He paced slowly. Most corporate manipulation doesn't look like a threat. It looks like a bonus, a title, a favor, a friendship. It feels like safety. Until it's not. Hands went up. Questions flew. Real ones. What if your boss pressures you but says it's off the record? How do you document manipulation without getting fired? What if you become the bad guy without realizing it? Ethan didn't give them prepackaged answers. He gave them the tools to find their own: checklists, code samples, history lessons buried in PDFs no one read. He showed them how narratives are built inside systems, how doubt is weaponized. After class, he walked to the parking lot, his daughter skipping beside him, hand in his. She told him about the field trip next week, how her teacher let her bring a model of the honesty detector she'd built out of cardboard and copper tape. "You know," she said, "my friend at school said you were on TV. Is that true?" "I was," he said, holding back a smile. "Did you stop the bad guys?" He paused. "I didn't stop them. I made it harder for them to hide." She thought about that, nodded, then ran ahead to the car. As Ethan watched her, he felt it, the understanding. He hadn't saved the world. He'd done something smaller, but maybe more permanent. He'd changed her world. That night, after dinner, his wife sat beside him on the porch, wine glass in hand, laptop open. She had an email from a publisher, one of the big ones. They wanted her to write a memoir, The Man Who Burned the Boardroom. They offered a generous advance. She closed the laptop. "I'm not writing it," she said. He looked at her, surprised. "You sure?" She nodded. "You don't need a monument, Ethan. You need a mourning." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "You've earned peace. Let's not sell it." For the first time in months, he let his lungs expand without caution. Weeks passed. The university offered him a permanent faculty position. The workshops grew. Students returned with stories. One stopped a toxic promotion chain in their part-time job. Another caught payroll discrepancies. Ethan watched them learn to see behind the curtain, but the world kept spinning. Late one Friday, a package arrived at his mailbox. No return address. A nondescript padded envelope. Inside, a single USB stick. Black, blank, familiar. He plugged it into his offline machine, every instinct on edge. One folder. For review, internal ethics violations, sequence systems. Inside, documents, emails, surveillance logs. It was like staring into the past. The same patterns. The same grooming techniques. The same fear. Another employee, somewhere, had just taken their leap of faith. They had sent their truth into the void, hoping it landed with someone who would believe them. At the bottom of the folder, a text file. "Saw your lectures online. Thank you for making me brave. I don't know what to do next, but I knew I had to start somewhere." He sat there for a long time, the screen casting a soft glow on his face. Somewhere behind him, his daughter called for help with her science project. His wife was baking, laughing at a recipe gone wrong. Life was happening, and the darkness wasn't gone. It never would be. But it was no longer invisible. He copied the folder, backed it up, wrote a reply. Then he whispered into the stillness of his study. "You can't kill the dark, but you can teach people where to find the light switch." He opened the new case file, and he began again.